this minute. So I'm going to turn it over to Leigh, who's been the leader of this panel for the week, and thank you for all your hard work.
John, thank you very much. Appreciate that introduction, and we're happy to be here today. Happy to have all of you folks with us. And the Urban Land Institute, you know, first we have a little paid announcement. Well, not this. This is thanks to the sponsors who've had us come here today and work, you know, this week and work on this panel. A little bit of a paid announcement. The Urban Land Institute was founded I think I may have skipped a slide. Nope, I didn't. Okay. Our mission is to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and in creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide. We're a multidisciplinary organization of about 45,000 people from around the world, most of which are in the United States, but not all. And we, you know, you can see up there all of the various different things that we do. It's an organization that's made up of professionals in all of the disciplines around land use, you know, architects, developers, engineers, lawyers. We even have a few lawyers in the group that we allow, although that's with reservations. My apologies to the lawyers that might be in the audience. But anyway, this week, we've been here to work on this panel, and the panelists are here as volunteers. And if you'll forgive me, I'm going to go back to my notes because otherwise we might be here longer than you want to be here. To paraphrase our assignment this week, we've been asked to come. Oh, by the way, these are the 79 to 80 something people that were kind enough to spend time with us on Tuesday and share a lot of their thoughts, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Since 1947, the ULI advisory service programs have helped more than 700 communities address challenges just like this or questions just like this around the world. This is actually my second trip to Raleigh for a panel like this. I served on one about 8 years ago, looking at the Dorothea Dix campus, which was very rewarding, and I'm excited to see things moving forward with Dorothea Dix. That's on a personal level. The folks that you'll hear from today, to paraphrase our panel assignment, we were asked, how should the stadium be financed? Okay. We were also asked, who should own it? We were asked to address the question, you know, to discuss how it compares or relates to other tourism venues. We were asked, how can Raleigh's leadership guide the growth and the revitalization of this area while acknowledging concerns about urban expansion and intensification? How best can the downtown South enhance the community, growing jobs and investment while retaining the heritage, respecting the residents, and avoiding the potential impacts of gentrification? So that was our assignment. That's what we were asked to take a look at. The folks that you will hear from today, and we'll come back to and introduce them specifically in a minute, come from a variety of disciplines and have all volunteered their time. We're here as volunteers this week in terms of our personal time to come to Raleigh to provide their insight and experience to this body of work, and we sincerely hope that it will prove helpful to the sponsor and the approximately 80 folks that we spoke with, you know, individually, and a number of the other people that we met around town while we were here. To give you a little background on how this process works, and I apologize, I'm going to put my glasses on. It's tough getting old. The sponsor provided us with a thorough briefing book that we received a couple of weeks in advance of coming on site, and that was invaluable in helping us get familiar. We arrived on Sunday as a group, discussed our perceptions from the advanced briefing book, materials that we'd been provided, and had a chance to enjoy a little bit of good soccer on Sunday night. And next time we come back, we expect the other team to win. So, but that's, you know, we won't go into that at this point. Monday included a thorough presentation by the sponsors and a tour of the site and the surrounding neighborhood so that we could thoroughly understand the context of the market and this particular project, or these particular projects, as you'll hear described. Tuesday provided an opportunity for the panel to visit in small groups with about 80 people and 80 local stakeholders, each of whom provided us with a wealth of information and background and perspective on the project. And our internal deliberations began in earnest over dinner that night. And by the way, when we use the word project, we even confused ourselves, and we kept trying to figure it out. There's a soccer stadium, there's a real estate development project that is within a prescribed area, and then there's a region or a neighborhood or a group of neighborhoods that's kind of the bigger picture. And those, we'll use the word project probably interchangeably, so I apologize for us perhaps not being real precise about that as we go through it, but in our minds, it's all the same issue. Okay, on Wednesday and Thursday, we spent some time in intense research, review and discussion and debate. And my note here says mostly cordial, but occasionally intense, okay? These, sometimes, when you get a bunch of type A personalities like this and you try to get them all in a room to work together, my job was to be sure that A, we showed up at 9 o'clock this morning here, and to be sure that everybody got fed. And I think everybody lived through it. We didn't lose anybody during the week, did we? Okay, good. But anyway, this morning we're here to provide the report of our observations and recommendations for the considerations of the sponsors and the community. And the ULI staff will return to DC and will prepare draft material, and that draft report will be delivered in approximately 60 days, and then shortly thereafter there'll be a for review and edit by the panelists, and then the final report will be issued probably within about 30 days thereafter. Each of my colleagues will be presenting a portion of the material that we've developed this week, and afterwards, as John mentioned earlier, there'll be an opportunity for questions. We all agree, just to kind of give you, to tee this thing up, we all agree that this is a rare opportunity to transform this area into a vibrant gateway to the city and an economic investment that benefits all. You'll hear that phrase used a couple of times throughout this presentation. With that said, let me introduce you to the panel, and this is in the order that you'll hear their presentations. Walt Bialis is Vice President of Research, JLL-Research from Dallas, Texas. Walt, raise your hand. Okay. And then Juanita Hardy, a business and creative placemaking consultant from Silver Spring, Maryland. Douette Pryce, President Pryce Resources, Sewells Point, Florida. Galin Brooks, Director of Infrastructure from the DowntownDC bid in Washington, D.C. Volz, and I've gotten people out of sequence here. Volz, planner and landscape architect from Dewberry, Rockville, Maryland. Todd Meyer, principal of Stantec from Chicago, Illinois. Zane Segal, project director of Zane Segal Project from Houston, Texas. And Tom Murphy, a senior fellow with the Urban Land Institute and also known as the previous mayor of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've also enjoyed, I have to give a shout out to the ULI folks that that have helped us on track, help keep us on track and move this along. Tom Eitler, who's the Senior Vice President with the ULI. Where'd Tom go? Oh, Tom's way in the back. He's trying to hide. Okay. And Rose Kim, and I keep wanting to call her Kim Rose, but Rose Kim, who's been the one that's really kept us on track and kept us going this week. So with that, Walt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leigh. I appreciate it, and thanks for having us here. My role in this panel was to kind of look at the numbers and look at the economic side of things and look at the overall kind of strength of the Raleigh and Raleigh-Durham markets. That is a step that we take in every single panel at ULI to give a context to what's going on. We had a great briefing book that provided a lot of that information, but at the same time, one of the important pieces of it was to kind of confirm that information and expand in some questions that we had as panelists as we were going through the week. So with that, let's talk a little bit about Raleigh-Durham. Raleigh-Durham is an incredibly growing market. Right now, it's about 1.9 million people and about 650,000 jobs, round figures. The Raleigh side of that is 1.4 million residents and, and 600, I think there's a typo there. Anyway, 645,000 jobs. Looking at that, the market has been growing very, very incredibly over the last several years. If you look at jobs, since 2010, they're up by 150,000 in Raleigh, in the Raleigh side of Raleigh-Durham. That's an amazing number because it's 30% growth. If you think about that, that's transformational growth in just the last handful of years here in this market. With that said, what are the strengths? Why are people coming to Raleigh for that? Because it's just not internal growth, it's all kinds of things going on. And it's a combination of the strong U.S. regional location. The Southeast has been getting its better than fair share of growth from all markets around the country. It's also your educational anchors that are here. It's also the affordable cost of living. And all of that leads to a very high quality of life. And we've heard that through many of the interviews that we had, and we were able to confirm that. But there's another piece of that, and that is if you look at Moody's analytics, they estimate that the Raleigh-Durham, or the Raleigh side of the cost of doing business is 86% of the U.S. average. I'll pause there, 86% of the U.S. average. So what that means is you have a great place for people to live, and you have a great place for people to do business in and for companies to grow and expand, and that's really important. The other thing that became clear is the educational institutions, and we can't make light of that at all because you have a foundation here that is absolutely amazing. The educational institutions serve as a talent hub. Talent is the #1 thing that everybody is looking for these days, which is why Raleigh has been in everybody's focus for growth. And it's also a tech hub, given the programs that are being offered there. If you look at development patterns and how downtown Raleigh fits in, it again has been an amazing story to tell. We heard many times that growth has been kind of going west and kind of southwest a little bit. Research Triangle Park has been established for a very long time and serves as kind of the edge of that growth on the Raleigh side of our market. But when you focus on the downtown from that, the downtown has gained a lot of momentum in the last decade, and maybe even if you look back 15 years. The chart that's there is office absorption, kind of the thing that we all look at in my business, and you can see how it's really started kind of in the mid to late 2000s that the downtown has really kind of caught fire. There's been some ups and downs with the economy, but it's been going very strong. Right now there's about 7 million square feet of Class A and B space in downtown. That includes owner-occupied space because that's an important feature as well. You don't want to leave those people out. And if you look at the multi-tenant space, it's about 5% vacancy. That's really tight. That's really tight by Raleigh standards, and which is 8.6%, and it's really tight over the history if you look back the last 10 or 15 years. So the market's in really, really good shape in the downtown area. If you look from 2012 to the present, that's been about 1.1 million square feet of absorption in downtown. That means new office space that's occupied. When you look at that, you go, wow, that's a big number in a downtown of only 7 million square feet. Who are some of the tenants that have moved in? I mean, you've had Red Hat, you've had Citrix, PNC Bank came here when they bought RBC and have their tower. FNB is here, Kimley Horn. A lot of companies have been expanding and growing in downtown Raleigh, and that's really good. It's an amazing story to tell. That translates immediately into the visitor market. Hotels in Raleigh, there's about 12 or 1,300 hotels. The average occupancy is 77%. That essentially means hotels are full in the downtown, given how hotel visitation works. And that's kind of a limiting factor. Hotels are kind of as good as they're going to get. There's not much above that they're going to go. So we have a question of how that's going to work, but we have a thriving convention center and a thriving visitor market. And for me, one of my surprises was the housing market. When you walk around downtown Raleigh in the evenings, there are people on the street, there are people walking dogs. It's really a nice core downtown area. We estimate there are probably about 2,300 dwelling units in the downtown of Class A and B apartments. That's a great number. What's even more amazing is that 1,800 of those units have been developed since 2015. They're running about 95% occupancy, so they're full. Again, you've managed to create a really good, thriving downtown and urban core. There are about 1,200 units in the pipeline, so it's not going to change. We're going to only enhance that over time. We looked at Raleigh and said, so we're in a good place, where are we going from here? And one of the points that we made was that there's nothing dramatic that's going to change kind of where Raleigh's headed and what's on the horizon, especially for the downtown. Urban living is important, urban employment is important, and Raleigh has that in a great, great location. One of the things that's concerned us, though, is that for you to continue to grow, you need a pipeline of future locations and parcels and sites. Right now, the downtown is kind of constrained. We have a road network, we have historic neighborhoods that bound it on the north, east, and west sides of town. So how does Raleigh continue to grow? Because without those sites, you're not going to realize the potential that you could have here. It's clear. South is the direction. We have available land to the south. We have an opportunity zone, which kind of brings us up to why we're here today to talk about the project. As you've all told us in the interviews, and as we've realized by driving around, downtown Raleigh has no formal entrance, no formal gateway to the city, and you have a unique opportunity ahead of you at I-40 for something that is big, something that is progressive, something that is urban in scale. And so we looked at the Downtown South project and the environs, the neighborhoods, and everything around it, and it's really amazing. You have a unique gateway, but there's a catch here. It's a unique gateway, but it has to have proper execution. And so the opportunity is an opportunity zone that's there. We have interstate access, we have high visibility, which would be very attractive to a lot of corporations. We have a cohesive land plan that's been put in place and that's being refined to make that all happen. What's going to go there? It could be a variety of things. Single-tenant, multi-tenant office at urban densities, not necessarily the suburban stuff you might see in Research Triangle Park, but more urban in keeping with where the economy is going. Lodging that serves on-site uses, but also is a little bit of a pressure relief valve for the demand that's happening in your downtown core because we're only a mile away. We have all kinds of things in housing that can feed a variety of needs from moderate income to affordable to more market rate housing. And then we have related retail and amenities that are naturally a part of something like that, so it's a cohesive development. So what's the challenge? It sounds like everything's really going good here. We're all right on the cusp of making this happen. The challenges are that we're a mile from the downtown and we're in somewhat of a disjointed site. There's no real pedestrian or vehicle access to the downtown, and we have to figure out how to make that happen to make this site really sing. The other part of it is that this is an ambitious plan that we've been looking at and that my colleagues are going to talk about later. It's an ambitious plan, and that's going to require patience to make it happen. It's also going to require persistence. I say those two things because it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be, oh, in 2 years it's up and running and we're all done. It's going to be a long-term plan that's going to require public effort, private effort to make it happen and actually realize that vision. We also talked about catalytic uses. Because the plan may take a while to actually bring it all together, what can happen early on the site? We've talked about a soccer stadium. You have great soccer teams already. That makes perfect sense. Maybe there's an MLS team in the future that could be there, but right now we're looking at catalytic uses. And as we as a team talked this past week, the stadium might be a nice idea. What else is there? It's incredible that you have this infrastructure of educational institutions like NC State's Digital Gaming Initiative and other schools here. And also, I think it's about 35 to 40 technology companies that are focused on gaming. Esports is big around the country. There are cities putting in esports stadiums and arenas. That may be something to think about as a catalytic use that could happen early, playing off the infrastructure that you already have in place here that makes this location something unique and something special for the city. There could be also other things in terms of interim uses. There was a great report done called Destination Raleigh 2028 that looked at a variety of attractions in the city. And one of the things they pointed out was sports and the importance of integrating to the local community, high school, and other tournament kind of sports. That's something that could happen here very quickly and serve as an interim use, getting the site an identity and getting it noticed. My colleagues are going to talk about a lot of these topics over the next 45 minutes or so, and I will turn it over to Juanita, who's going to talk a little bit about the vision for Downtown South. But thank you all for having us here.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody this morning? Great. I feel really good. I'm in my state. I was born here, raised here, and so it's really good to be back home and to have the opportunity to work with an impressive group of folks. And we have a story for you. We have a message for you. It's a very exciting message. So you heard my colleague Walt, he set the stage. He talked about what the market is today, how you're growing, and what the possibilities are, laying the seeds for what I want to talk about, which is the vision for the project. Raleigh is growing, and it's going to continue to grow. And there is a rare opportunity for Raleigh to realize that growth in a managed way that could bring lots of benefit to the city and all of its citizens. That's what we concluded after looking at all of the data, after talking with, I think, about 80 people over the course of this week, that there is a way to move forward. And that way is what I'm going to talk about, which is the Downtown South vision. So let me go to this chart. And I'm going to ask you to just visualize with me for a moment what the possibilities could be. Okay, you see the area, the Downtown South area. Is this working? Okay, well, you'll see the dotted, there we go, dotted area, that's Downtown South, okay? Now visualize with me what the possibilities could be. Because we're talking about Downtown South, But our fearless leader, Leigh, talked about how when we talk about the project is not just downtown South, but it's the area surrounding it. It's all of it. That all comes into play. And we'll talk about how that comes into play. So imagine a gateway, an enhanced gateway into, southern gateway into downtown. Imagine walkable, bikeable spaces, community, enabled by your greenway that already exists, an enhanced greenway. Think about housing for all, and I'll say a little bit more about that later. And then because of the development that happens here, a lot of good comes from that in terms of enhanced workforce development that's going to be required, you know, as the project proceeds, increased jobs, sustainable jobs, and then enhanced support for entrepreneurial development, opportunities for small businesses and minority businesses to participate in that development, and more amenities being brought to that community, to that surrounding community, right? Like food access, restaurants, grocery stores, and unique retail, for example. And then increased transit options, as my colleague Walt pointed out, the different needs that will emerge as this area is developed. So it's a rare opportunity because it's a large tract of land, 100 acres, right? At the intersection of South Saunders and Interstate 40 and 440. So it's a very large contiguous effort that allows the development of a big idea, okay? Now, how does that idea get realized? It gets realized through an anchor concept. And the concept that we've been looking at is a sports and entertainment complex. It has this stadium, a sports complex, that's the stadium that you see here, and then built around it, office, hospitality, hotels, residential, public space, and learning facilities, right? All of that is within this complex. And again, while this is the focus of development, there's a larger area that's being considered. I want to talk a little bit more about housing for all. So in the interviews many of the interviews that we conducted, there was a consistent theme that came up, the need to be concerned about the people living and working around this complex, right? And we also know, and were directed by the project sponsors, by Kane Realty and the North Carolina Football Club, that we needed to make sure that there was economic development opportunities and growth in that area, that we were concerned, that we should be concerned about that area. So that's why the focus of housing for all. When we talk about housing and the housing that will happen, the residential housing that will happen in the South Downtown complex, that's one aspect of it, but housing for all pertains to that entire area. And how do we do that? The possibilities are different housing products that range from luxury housing to housing for workforce, to housing to student housing. So different range of housing, and also housing initiatives that speak to people that are homeowners retaining their home as property values rise, for example. People that are residents that want to own homes, initiatives that will help them to become homeowners, homes that need to be maintained or need to be updated, funding or initiatives for that, as well as new construction within the complex and the surrounding complex. So that is the idea of housing for all. And how does this all roll out? It rolls out, our project sponsors tell us, over about a 9 to 10 year horizon. That in the first phase, delivering about year 3, we'll see the infrastructure in place, the stadium in place, parking in place, as well as beginning to see some of the residential, office, and hotel space. And over the next 3 phases, that span about 2 years apart, you'll see the full rollout of the residential office and retail space. So that is the concept. It is a big concept, but it is a doable concept, you know, with managed and focus and commitment. And it's a concept that involves not just the developers and the folks that are actually creating Downtown South, but all of you, all of the community, but with particular focus on the surrounding community. So I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about community investment structure, because that becomes a very important component of the success of this project, right? And what we know from past projects, we've done research, we know that community engagement and clear communications where everybody understands things and understands it in the same way, have what we call a shared understanding, is really, really important. In our interviews, there was a consistent message that came through around concerns that different stakeholder groups had relative to this project. One was around communications. Another one was around protecting the residents and businesses surrounding Downtown South. And another was around really building trust and being able to work across lines. And when I say stakeholders, I'm referring to a large range of stakeholders, some of them listed here. The government, state, local, and city, nonprofit organizations, businesses, and the community. We spoke to, as you know, sitting here, all of these various groups. So it's important to ensure that there is community engagement and clear communications and everybody on the same page. I want to talk about a project as an example of what the possibilities might be. This is the 11th Street Bridge project in Washington, D.C. It is a project designed to take a defunct bridge and convert it into a park. And the significance of that is it connects what has been forever an isolated part of D.C. to the rest of D.C. The part to the east of the Anacostia, largely low-income, African-American, had a lot of the concerns that we've heard from you. They addressed those concerns through a 7-step process in communication and engagement process. The leadership raised $43 million to build this bridge park. And through the efforts emerging from their 7-step effort, they gained the support of a national foundation which contributed $50 million to execute the actions coming out of that plan. Now, the city of Raleigh and its citizens could realize these kind of benefits through working together, right? I certainly can't promise that, but there is the possibility that philanthropic money would step up to make sure that this is a project that is the best project that it can be for all the citizens, that there's an inclusive project by which everybody benefits. Let's turn this into what this might look like let's look at what this might look like for a Downtown South. So engaging the Southeast community, making sure that, and having goals where everybody is clear on the same page, engaging stakeholders in the process, such as local universities. There's a very strong partnership with Wake Tech now in terms of providing workforce development, for example. Shaping the communication so we address that communication issue, everybody's on the same page. Implement the project, but don't just stop there. Evaluate, is it working? And making adjustments along the way through partnerships. And ensuring that art and culture is part of it. Raleigh has a rich history. And certainly that area has a rich history. You know, a large African-American population there, you know, understanding the history of the place now with that population, what preceded it, showcasing some of the green assets that are there, so that a lot can be done to mark the place, and you'll hear more about that from some of my colleagues. And then celebrating early wins. So through this is important, but the way we put teeth in it is measurements and committed resource to make it happen. And so you can see some of the types of things that could be measured to indicate, are we on track? Are we moving in the right direction, right? And having dedicated staff and a senior leader that's involved in allocating some of their time to this project as well. And we're suggesting 1 to 2 full-time folks over about a 3 to 5 year period. So as we said, it is a big vision, but it is a doable vision. And it's one that happens when everybody's on the same page and marching in the same direction. We're very excited for you. And I'd like now to turn it over to my colleague Douette to start to get into some of the details of how this all plays out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Juanita. Can you tell that she's passionate about this? Just a little bit, right? So, Walt and Juanita have kind of gone through and laid away. Oh, sorry. How about I move the mic to me? All right, so Walt and Juanita have kind of done a great job of paving the vision, the way, and giving us an idea of the demand that you guys have here in the marketplace. What I'm going to really do right now is kind of reiterate a program that's in place right now with our thoughts on its viability. So like Juanita says, we've got a vision that seems grand, seems great. I'm sure some of you are going, oh my God, we've got a lot of work to do. Really not so much, because as I look at the development program that were presented to us by the sponsor, I believe that you guys have kind of already gotten the framework. Now it's kind of expanding that. So as we looked at the mix of uses that's on this program, the 1.9 projected, the proposed project is about a $1.9 billion product that's been given to us. However, like as everyone said, this is creating a rare opportunity on the south side of Raleigh downtown. So the Downtown South project we see as being a huge transformation of close to 100 acres in this area, but we think it could actually do more and expand to include a lot more if it is looked at more of a holistic program that will include the overall community within the project footprint that was given to us and to the outside, just as Juanita said. Another part that we feel that should be an important factor is going to be the Beltway Greenway that's already there and existing, and connecting, activating it, and creating a synergy and sense of place that I think everyone within the region can be excited about. As we went to this site, when we look just at that particular site, it feels disjointed, like they said, from the downtown or remaining area. But you've got a natural resource that's basically is a spine that can merely make this a phenomenal opportunity in what is called an opportunity zone for you guys. So I think that this is definitely an option that we really need to look at. Look at the synergy, creating the central space, connection to the Dix Park, which I believe is something that everyone here is excited about and has been committed to over the past 5 to 10 years. So really creating that. The public-private partnership opportunity. This project alone will not happen with just private. We need public. We need government. We need a partnership that basically says, how do we look at this as a region and make this a success for all in Raleigh? So basically what I'm saying is you've already got the framework, but expand it a little bit and get some more stakeholders at the table by doing the communication factor that Juanita has already gone over. This project basically has a center point of the stadium, a 20,000 seat stadium. Right sizing and making sure what you have there is definitely key. One of the things that we look at is you've got a North Carolina football club that is pretty good, I think, because you got some really talented women on those teams that have actually played in the World Cup that
we all won the other day. That's huge, all right? So I think that this is something that we really need to understand what you have. Another opportunity is going to be programming that stadium. Just soccer alone, I'll be honest, will not make it work. You will need to have different programs. This is happening in Orlando. It's happening in Houston. It's happening in Nashville. These are all, everyone is trying to do a stadium, and they're figuring out how we do it successfully so it will basically work on its own once it's built. So program it with esports, non-sporting events, music events, concerts. I'm going to go back to esports. One of the things that really knocked my socks off was when we got in here on Sunday, our hotel was full. And I saw these guys walking around on phones, and they were literally playing with a guy next to them on their computers because there was an esport event right at the convention center next door. This is a $900 million revenue global generator right now, and it happened in downtown Raleigh. And from what I'm hearing and some of the stats I've read, this is a breeding ground for a lot of the talent and the tech that's going into that. Expand on that, really go after that, really take advantage of what you have to make that happen. Now, I'm gonna go into the future of this stadium. You know, one of the things we heard through the stakeholders is that, you know, MLS may not be something we'd want to go after. And I understand, and when we did read the reports, we found out, you know, Charlotte's kind of came in and taken a big hit, big run at that. That's great. But the way I see it, I'm an old military guy. The war ain't over until it's over. So at the end of the day, think about this. You've got a soccer program that's working. You come in and you're going to create a vision here that's been outlined by my team. You're going to make this a central gateway, not just a gateway, but a community for this project. And when you do that, 3 to 5 years down the road, your soccer program's going gangbusters, you're getting all these games, you now have a more centrally located stadium that's accessible by all. North Carolina, when my daughter's in school, she's learning the capitals. Oh, what's the capital of North Carolina? Raleigh. Everyone's gonna know that because that's the name that's gonna be in their mind. So I would tell you right now is, as you look at this, don't give up on the fact that maybe MLS may never come here. You never know what may happen in the future. I would say still consider that.
Development, and the other part of the development program is looking at the commercial components that's there. One of the things that we do see is that there's the opportunity for office and creative space. And what do I mean by that is, yes, you have your traditional office, but one of the things that's really growing later is incubator space for a lot of these new tech companies or other opportunities to help fill that space. We work. Another big factor is, as the millennials are coming out, they like being in a downtown campus. You've got a plethora of different universities that surround you in your site, and you create this downtown synergy, they're going to want to be there. So one of the things to look at is how do you partner with your universities and your different schooling opportunities to really get into that downtown and create a synergistic opportunity for your millennials. What I also have found is that, like Walt says, the demand is there. And guess what? You guys have proven it. The sponsor has proven it in this marketplace. I just go to the Dillon project and I look at it. It's phenomenal. It's a great mix of history, of residence, of office, and it works. Can you guys do it? Yes. So another part of the project that's there. Hospitality, there's a presentation to do another 1,200 rooms of total on this site. As Walt said, patience, patience, patience. However, as you're creating the soccer, you're creating the demand downtown, you're creating all these different events that are coming into town, hotel is definitely gonna be a need. However, one of the things we do think is that as you look at that is to make sure there's a conference center component that is included in that, and there might have to be a upfront hit to really look at speccing a hotel of that sort to really create that synergy, but you will need it as you're trying to grow these other programs. Retail, commercial, once again, I'm not going to waste my time on that because I've visited the projects that are here. You guys have it. You guys know how to create it. However, it's getting a little bit more creative as how you do certain things. Restaurant and bars, same thing as before. Incubator spaces with restaurants and bars, which creates some flexibility. We went to 3 phenomenal restaurants that you guys have in your downtown, Death and Taxes, City,
and gravy. Great local fairs. The food was awesome. Can you picture having either a culinary space within this office that was actually training your local community to really have the opportunity to go out and create your own little restaurants, because that's what grows a community, is your local entrepreneurs. So, you know, get creative. You have your artists, cultural village, and urban plaza. I've put that in there. Once again, you guys have done it. It's not some, I don't think there's anything we're saying is not foreign. It's just really making sure as you're looking at this, you're incorporating this and make sure you're communicating it to the folks out there, because that's what's going to make this project really get the attention it needs to help go forward. The other part is residential component. That's been brought up by Juanita. It's how we include everyone within this project. Market rate mix. Mixed rate housing is another big opportunity out there. It's been done in Orlando, where they're creating these huge villages that include market rate with affordable and attainable housing in that in one product. Student housing, like I said, you get universities involved. That's a little bit more attainable. You've got to definitely, if you can create that, you've got a base. You've got the downtown. You can do it with different products. Veteran housing. As a veteran myself, I was surprised to learn that this is the #4 best housing market for vets. That's huge. So that's another thing that's definitely a component that you really need to look at, because as you're creating that housing for the veterans, another component to really factor in is how do you create that program to help transition those coming out of the military into civilian life. So a combination of all that, with all the tech, with all the companies you have here, you've got it. It's how do you create that program to really show what you have that's special. Definitely look at the assessment to figure out if you have for sale product within the market, whether it's condos, townhomes, and creating a different synergy outside of just a building that goes up and parking around it. Last but not least, parking and circulation. One of the things, and I'm guilty of it as a developer, we are great, we look at the building, we throw them up, we think we have everything figured out, and then we're like, oh my gosh, we did not look at the circulation, parking, and how it impacts the grand scope, not just of my project, but the overall. So definitely take a look and review the grid patterns, your parking entries, and just how you will handle your traffic within your development and outside, especially as you're creating this event space. I think it's going to blow up. So you really have to plan for the future and make sure that you're aligning that, not just for what you're putting in here today, but for the future of how big it can grow. Public transportation, I know that there are different plans for this that will allow you guys to connect it to the public. I will be reminiscent to say that these are already in place. Just go to the sources that are out there and make sure you get it done. So I'm just going to kind of encapsulate it as that. As we look at this present plan you have, plus the augmented program that we've basically put forward to you guys, the downtown south and the surrounding community amenities could become a rare opportunity. It's a venue which allows soccer, sporting events, entertainment options, creative space for ideas leading to innovation, access to opportunity, a shared experience of varying demographic, young, old, folks that support a government, executive, and retired. You've got a huge mix that'll be here. And it'll be a place where businesses can expand with access to quality workforce, which you already have, but you're now basically accentuating that. This could be a community where it's housing for all incomes, where they can live in their neighborhood, work in their neighborhood, and enjoy their neighborhood. And while they're doing that, they're inviting all their friends to come over to spend their money in your project. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Galin, who's going to kind of show the exciting parts of what we've got.
Thank you very much, Douette. So as you heard my colleague Juanita very eloquently say earlier, placemaking is a critical component in making this project the best offering that it can be. In looking at placemaking, we looked at 4 specific areas. We looked at branding and identity, surrounding interventions, internal site attributes, and interim uses. In downtown South, we know we have 2 incredibly powerful features in the Wake County Trail System, Greenway Trail System, and the future soccer stadium. Therefore, we see these regionally impactful elements as leading to a possible unifying theme of activity, encompassing sports, play, movement, and exploration. The Downtown South project will be the center for residents and visitors of Raleigh who want to embrace a healthy lifestyle. Here you will be able to come see a soccer match, listen to your favorite musicians, take a ride on the Walnut Creek Trail, 15 miles or even more, learn about the local ecology, check out interim uses at the fields, or visit activity-related permanent on-site amenities like the ones shown here. This theme of activity and the fun and energy that these uses bring could be represented in the branding and public space features of the site. Effective place branding comes from a genuine sense of place. It's generated from within communities. This project has to have a clear sense of place to be successful. And to do that, it must have a clear brand. But that brand, as I said, must be authentic. So as part of the communication and engagement plan that my colleague Juanita mentioned earlier, Downtown South should work with the existing communities in South and Southeast Raleigh to define an identity for the project. Residents and stakeholders in these neighborhoods know the roots and rich history and culture of the area better than anyone else and can help to guide a process that realizes a much more impactful outcome. By hiring a branding consultant that can engage the local community to host a public feedback session, propose several options, and have the community decide between them, the resultant product would resonate in a much more powerful way with local residents and visitors alike. There's some samples shown here of effective placemaking branding done in other places. All the images that I'm showing on these slides are not in any way prescriptive. They're intended to inspire and show options. In terms of surrounding interventions, we thought about a number of different possibilities. So through its connections to the outdoors and the Walnut Creek Trail, Downtown South will embrace the natural environment. It should also embrace the joy and health benefits that it can bring to the residents of Raleigh. Key corridors adjacent to Downtown South should celebrate this. Street trees placed regularly between sidewalk space and the roadbed can reinforce a feeling of streets as linear parks. As discussed in the other sections of this presentation, local anchors such as Dorothea Dix Park, the Greater Wake County Capitol Greenway Trail System, Centennial Campus, the Cargill site, the Bain Water Treatment Plant, should be embraced as part of a larger area and amenities for Downtown South. Placing banners and other placemaking materials that recognize these anchors throughout the local neighborhood will help to reinforce their presence as part of it. The rich history of the area and its past residents can also be celebrated on local historical placards. Visibility into the past along major connectors such as South Wilmington and South Saunders to the Downtown South site can help people to understand where they are and will help the existing neighborhoods to be a visible part of the future of the area. Additionally, public art that relates to the history and character of the area, such as the images shown here on this slide, should be considered at following major nodes along South Saunders and South Wilmington, at Pemmark and Prospect on South Saunders, and at the newly introduced intersections that my colleague Todd will talk about at Waterworks and Keeter Drive on South Wilmington. We're also recommending that the project team define a comprehensive placemaking package. This package should include permanent outdoor activations, like the ones I showed on the first slide, and branded street features, like the ones shown in this slide. This project that we're in today features a number of really successful installations of that type. Wayfinding features within the site should be large in scale and in keeping with the brand and offerings. Large beacon light pieces of artwork, like you've seen shown here, can be placed at 4 to 5 nodes within the site, including the Greenway Trail. Movement could be a part of these pieces. Kinetic sculptures are one possibility. They've been very popular in other locations due to their interactive nature and engaging visual presence. Again, working with the local community in a similar fashion to what I described earlier as part of the communication and engagement plan will be a critical component to the success of this effort. As you heard earlier from my colleague Walt, providing major interim uses on the site will be a catalytic move, drawing large volumes of people to the site from the beginning, creating a psychological comfort with traveling to the site, and helping to improve the perception of the site and its offerings to the public. There's a clear and communicated need for additional playing fields in the area. The project team can work with the local community to come up with a vision for the use of the phase 2 and 3 spaces that fulfill the community's needs. However, other activities should also be provided. Examples are shown here and include Zorb balls, which some of you may have never heard of, but they're very popular in the sites that they've been introduced. Bocce courts, miniature golf, a temporary pump bike track, which is shown in the bottom left-hand corner. These could all likely be a part of a package for the remaining space and would benefit the local community, the entire project, and Raleigh. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Todd to tell you more about planning and urban design. Thank you.
Thanks, Galin. All right, everyone's still awake? It's cold enough in here. I think everyone, that'll help. So we want to transition over to talk a little bit about the planning and urban design issues that we see that are the context of the project. The first is that, you've heard this saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So what Downtown South is doing is creating another destination that's really a series of destinations in Raleigh, that there's lots of things to do and see, whether you're a resident or a visitor. From a land use standpoint, historically, this area has historically been, industrial. But the future vision is that it's very different, that it involves mixed-use development. It involves office and research and development, as well as public parks and open space, of course, with the Greenway. The other thing is there are lots of different regulations in place. The city of Raleigh and the planning department, have worked with all kinds of jurisdictions to preserve the natural beauty of the corridor and right-of-way for future improvements. So all of this is leading to creating a different kind of experience in South Raleigh. So this is not just an idea or a concept, but this is happening through careful and thoughtful planning. So the density that exists in the neighborhood today, there's a lot of single-family, charming neighborhoods there that and of course some of the industrial that we see on the right. Much of this will stay in place for many years, but some of it will, of course, transition. When we think about the Downtown South development, that it would be higher density and a mix of uses, accommodating some of the regional growth that Walt talked about, and providing a walkable urban neighborhood that's more similar to downtown. And if you think about, we talked to some folks that said, 20 years ago, I didn't go downtown, but I do today. And so more and more people are wanting that kind of neighborhood. So some of the opportunities and constraints, I-40 is an excellent amenity, right? It provides great access to the site and visibility. When you're thinking about locating a stadium and people coming from out of town and figuring out where they're going, it's got great visibility. But it is a barrier in some ways too. We can't expand the development to the south. The Norfolk Southern Railroad, we've heard about the possibility of adding commuter rail service that would carry people from Raleigh down to Fayetteville. And you could think, also as a constraint, if we're thinking about developing next to it, putting residential next to a train line, has other issues as well, like noise and vibration and air quality. So we need to think about those things as well. The other one is the former waterworks site, so there's a potential redevelopment opportunity with that. Which is exciting because it's a historic, handsome building, but the tanks outside are still in use, so the long-term use of those needs to be discussed. The other is just the topography and the landform. This is not a flat site that's easy to develop, right? There's 50 feet of grade change that happens from the top of the site down to the bottom of the stream. And while that's good for stacking and layering views, it can provide for some challenge in terms of construction. The other thing is you know, this is an active drainage way that, you know, when it rains and all that water has to go somewhere, right? So this is a map that shows both the floodway and the floodplain, and what we see is that, you know, that there's been because of the historic development there's been a little bit of a pinch point that you can see there with the arrows, right? So what we know is that, you know, as we develop these sites and we increase the amount of impervious surfaces, we're going to have to work with the government agencies and regulators to make sure that we have enough capacity in that greenway to drain all that stormwater and preserve the quality of the greenway. So, you know, today the greenway is a little bit narrower, and while we do have some trails in there and a lot of trees, you know, in the future it could be a bit wider, have a little bit more of an urban edge that might relate to the new development in the stadium, while also providing enough capacity for all of that water. So we want to make sure we maintain that over time. The other thing is about, you know, mobility and connectivity. So the city commissioned the Southern Gateway Corridor Study, which was done by Jay Davis. Well done document if you haven't seen it. It articulates restitching some of the street network together. And that's positive because we want to provide as many ways as possible to get from one place to another. The other is, you know, we want to make sure that we're leveraging transit and that we're doing as much as we can to provide mobility options for people. That you shouldn't have to own a car to be able to get, you know, say from downtown to downtown South or to Dix Park. And then finally, of course, pedestrian and bicycle access. You know, the Southern Gateway study also looked at this and how we can enhance different corridors so that people can walk and ride their bikes and get to from one place to another as well. When we put all of these things together, that really helps to give people choices and options about how they want to get from one place to another. And if you live, work, and play within a short enough distance, you may not need a car. The other thing is, you know, looking at some of these primary corridors that run through the area, you know, this is Saunders, and, you know, it's 3 lanes in each direction. And it was designed to move a lot of cars quickly from I-40 to downtown, which it does effectively. But there's opportunities here to enhance the corridors like this, to make them more walkable, maybe more friendly to bikes, maybe have more commercial uses along them and streetscape treatments. And there is, you know, talk of putting a bus rapid transit line on Wilmington, for example, where we would dedicate certain bike lanes and cars lanes and dedicated bus lanes in the center, which would help to improve that connectivity to downtown. And then we mentioned the train line, which, you know, eventually could have an autonomous shuttle that might connect from station to station and provide greater access to downtown South. So lots of different mobility choices here. And, you know, when we talk about creating a destination, it's not just about sports and entertainment, but it's really about social interaction, it's about creating jobs, it's about housing. And we want to do all this through high quality planning and design. You know, this is a commitment to the region to create a really special place. And so, you know, we do that through the design of the buildings, but we also need to do that with really good urban design elements, the spaces between the buildings. So, you know, as we think about all this, you heard Juanita talk about celebrating our local culture. You know, this project should be unique to Raleigh, right? And we want to make sure that we're celebrating, you know, local music and food and entertainment. And then also the greenway, it's a unique element to the site. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, it maintains its status as a prime amenity, not only in Greater Raleigh, but for this site here. So in closing, you know, I think we have a real opportunity here to create a dynamic urban district that is walkable, it's connected, it's diverse, it's resilient in terms of stormwater, and it's authentic to Raleigh. So it's really exciting. We've had a great week looking at the area and the environment, and as we've said, we think it's a special opportunity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to talk about open space.
Thank you, Todd. So this vicinity map shows what I suspect most of you already know, that there's an extensive trail and greenway system that Wake County has. Over 117 miles of trails, and luckily for us that this greenway trail passes along the southernmost edge of the property right here. And ultimately these trails connect to the Mountains to Sea trails. So there's an incredible presence to tap into this regional asset and make this project become part of a greater destination. So there's 7 significant destinations that we've isolated between our site down here and northwest up here. We have Lake Crabtree County Park, Umstead State Park, which is one of the top, if not the top, visited state park in North Carolina. Moving southeast, we have Schenck Forest. We have the Prairie Ridge Eco Station, North Carolina Museum of Art, which has the largest museum park in the country with 164 acres and also trail connectivity. And then ultimately, we would have Downtown South, which poises itself to be a key piece in what I'm seeing as sort of a local version of your own emerald necklace. So putting these pieces together, you get the sense of the presentation of a cultural or heritage trail. The connected destinations, the recreational opportunities, the historic significance, and the educational abilities that each of these destinations present. There's an incredible potential for local or heritage trail to start, and it becomes very, very evident when you start to make these connections. Key elements, mostly, if not entirely, are already in place. The destinations are there. There may be some improvements to trails, to some of that connectivity to strengthen those connections. But from what I'm seeing, it would require minimal effort and an investment on behalf of the project team. And this just shows a proximity. I mean, 10 miles the way the crow flies from our site will take you straight up to Umstead Park, which is an incredibly short distance when you talk about trail running and trail biking. So the idea of this heritage or cultural trail provides significant programming and community outreach opportunities. You'll see it in many other parks across the country. The use of community engagement to draw new users to the site, to change the perception of the place, to really invigorate the project. You could partner with local groups, other parks, the institutions situated along the trail to sponsor community events, educational programs, cleanup, improvement, restoration efforts, trail monitoring, to really start to deeply weave yourself into the community. Locally, the City of Raleigh has 351 parks that consume 11% of the city's land. The Trust for Public Land has their own rating system, which is a very comprehensive rating system that they use to grade the top 100 cities in the US. The City of Raleigh had a park score of 61 out of 100. I think the most significant revelation from this study is that 57.4% of the residents live within a 10-minute walk of open space or recreation, which that seems like a healthy number, but in this area of access, the city received its lowest score. There's still approximately 200,000 residents that live outside of that 10-minute walk measure. So these two areas are areas that the study has determined and prioritized as areas of deficiency and need. So the Downtown South project could provide a lot to this community and where the recreation and open space is lacking. And the nature of this project has the ability to offer the best of both worlds, an urban plaza and a natural park, catering to the wide variety of users and uses, programming potential and educational opportunities. And like I mentioned, that there's a potential to fill a very great need within the adjacent communities and the greater region as well. So we all know the benefits of interaction, being outdoors. There's proven health benefits to that. And not only that, but it improves the sense of community. So a potential downtown South Greenway Park. What does that look like? You have this incredible floodplain, this incredible greenway that really just needs to be daylighted, opened up, and sort of shared with the rest of the community. Utilizing and leverage that existing natural feature present on the site and highlight the native ecology. You've got tremendous sort of ecosystems that are present right on the site. I mean, you could have a regenerative riparian plantings, use of native material, educational, interpretive things with bird watching, educational signage, all sorts of things like that. Just some examples of what these floodplain parks can offer in terms of recreation and how those look adjacent to an urban area. Also, when we speak about an urban plaza, that space has a lot of flexibility in terms of programming. Again, it's appropriate for all types of use throughout the day. And it's an amenity to attract businesses, residents, and users alike. Promotes as active, passive recreation, and again, those proven health benefits. And also, as we talked about before, the improving of the social community. Just a few more examples of what that looks like. So the dynamic and the juxtaposition of having these two really dynamic spaces side by side will give a tremendous amount of character to this place. So next I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Zane to talk about ownership.
I've been told to speak fast, so I will. Actually, I won't, but I will try to keep it short. I'm going to be speaking about what I think many of you are really interested in, the catalytic project, which is known as a professional level soccer stadium. Maybe that's the reason that we're here. I don't think it's the only reason, but one of the main reasons. I know a little about soccer. I've never played it, but I've watched my 4-year-old grandson try to play it. And I've also watched the United States national team try to beat Argentina in the CONCACAF and get whipped 4-0. I've also watched that same Argentina team play to a 0-0 tie against Chile, their arch enemies, and end up losing in the penalty kicks at the end. So I do know something about the game, probably more than most people my age, because soccer is growing so fast in this country, but it's growing particularly among the young people. And we've been told that in this particular area, youth soccer is incredibly important. What's great about youth soccer is that those people will grow up, become collegiate players and professional players. So you have your own farm system right here, and that'll be great. The actual discussion of the stadium, I've got slides here from one of the more famous stadiums in the world, not necessarily one of the best looking stadiums. For those of you who don't know, this is La Bombonera in Buenos Aires, home of Boca Juniors. Boca Juniors is a team that is owned by the citizens. There are members, like a golf club. And that's not really something we're proposing here. I don't know where, anywhere in the United States where that model's working. So we're discussing a more traditional model of ownership that the stadium, and this is one idea, we're not the ones who'll decide how it's done, but we think it'll work to create a authority which is composed of both the city and the county, which gives them bonding capacity, and that authority has a board of directors appointed by the city and the county. It might also have other stadiums and facilities under its purview. And that might spread the risk, if you will, and the income streams so that this stadium can be part of a system. But the main thing is that the equity for this has to come from a number of sources. And that includes bonding capacity, the interlocal funds, and the team owner and the developer of the project in some fair way. And what we're thinking is that the equity coming from the team and the developer would be in the form of what we call tenant improvements. If you're in a retail building, that the tenant will pay for some of the improvements on the inside, and the authority pays for the structure, the infrastructure of the land, the drainage, the roads, the garages, etc. In this case, the project developer and the team owner, in some form, will be the exclusive tenant. And exclusive means they will have the right to program it. We do think they would need to have other programs there, and the actual physical facility is sufficient to play a lot of other sports. I'm going to go back for a second, and if you notice on this slide, that field is not in very good condition, and they only play soccer there. So it is important that the field not be overplayed to maintain the quality of it for soccer. We're not saying how big it should be in the first phase. I know the city and the county have authorized studies, and they may come up with a good solution for what's a good size in the beginning. But on the other hand, there should be a provision made for increasing the seating of the stadium to what would be sufficient for MLS, if that ever happens in the future, or for other sports that might be able to use the facility. The Sports Authority, as I said, could own several other existing and proposed facilities. I'm using the example of the Harris County Houston Sports Authority. I recommend you check out their website. It lists about 20 different facilities, all the major sports stadiums, and then some additional things like bike parks and other park facilities that are used for recreation. I don't know if this organization owns them all, but they're all on their website, so that there's some umbrella organization keeping an eye on all the sports facilities, and I do know that they own the big facilities. I don't know if you know who that gentleman is up there, but he's the only person that I know of from Argentina who has actually ascended to being a god status, and he did it through his feet. The operation, as I said, you have a lot of other sports that could work there, and then a lot of other events, concerts, festivals, conventions, track meets. What I would suggest is that in the feasibility study, they look at those other things and figure out which things could work. I know you have other facilities that do these things in this region, but also I know your population's growing, and you have a lot of universities that need additional facilities for some of these sports. So it's worth looking at how that could be programmed, because one of the things that's going to make the stadium work and the whole region work is having enough events that it's not just 30 days a year, there's a soccer match. And I think the development team's aware of that. They're trying to create a bigger schedule than that. And that would include some of these things, which might happen when there's no event going on. Sports bars, cafes, restaurants, musical venues. One idea that I had is a large screen that you normally are going to have in a stadium, you have in the current stadium. You could have simulcasts of other games from around the world. We see that with horse racing. We're not going to be having betting, but people go to watch a horse race somewhere else. And there are some pretty important matches around the world that you might have soccer enthusiasts coming to. And then other kinds of physical activities like gym classes and yoga, etc. This picture is one of the paseos leading into Boca Stadium. That yellow thing in the back there is the stadium. And so the idea is that it's an active area, not just in the moment that you're having a game, but at other times. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Mayor Tom, who is an experienced stadium builder, as former mayor of Pittsburgh, when he built stadiums for those little teams called the Steelers, and what's that one, the Pirates? The Pirates, that's something that steals from other people. Anyway, he knows something about this.
Hi, are there any Steeler fans here? Yeah, we got a couple here, right? Thank you. The guy taking the picture. I'm delighted to be here. My colleagues have laid out to you a very ambitious program. What I want to do is talk about how to pay for it. And let me just say that developments happen incrementally. Great cities happen strategically. And so we got to think about what it means to think strategically, not just about this development, but about strategically what this means for a whole quadrant of Raleigh. So we're talking about a comprehensive program to maximize public value, to monetize private investment, and enhance a public-private partnership culture. And I'm going to show you two charts. One is the uses of the money that my colleagues have talked about, and the other will be how to pay for that. Within your own culture, how you move this money around really is important. So we've outlined for you funding uses that we have on site itself, for the community generally, and on and off-site community benefits. For example, we recommend funding a number of youth soccer fields around the area, and we believe in Pittsburgh, for example, both the Pirates and the Penguins hockey team have funded facilities to engage young people in their sport. To be future fans. We've also identified investments in a greenway to take the greenway that is okay right now and to turn it into something much more spectacular. We've talked about, as you can see, 4 programs around home ownership. We have neighborhoods adjacent to this development site that are historic, affordable neighborhoods, and we want to keep them like that, not price people out. We also look at job and workforce development. These need to be very intentional. You can't have good intentions only. You need to be intentional about making these things happen. On the sources side, there is significant investment by the developers in the soccer stadium in making the development happen in equity and debt. One of the things that we have up there that is a big number is a TIF or synthetic TIF. I'll explain that a little bit. I understand that you've never done that in Raleigh, and it is really the monetizing the value you're going to create here. You can see we use some existing programs over 10 years to improve the transportation. I understand that Wake County has a transportation fund, and Raleigh, to their credit, created an affordable housing fund, and we're shifting some portion of that money to invest in this big picture neighborhood here. We see that there are state, federal infrastructure money. They need to be pulled together, not forgotten about, and understand that again is intentional, how you go after that money. So this development might have 20 different sources of financing in it, but it drives a strategic investment for this neighborhood. And so let me just take a moment to explain TIFs, or synthetic TIFs. So this property sits there as it does now, a lot of vacant property or older industrial property, and it pays X in taxes. Now, Mr. Kane comes and invests $2 billion in that property, and it's going to pay Y in taxes, a lot more money. That difference between what is being paid today and what will be paid when the development is called the increment, that increase in taxes. And many, many cities around the country have used that increment, a portion of that, to finance the necessary infrastructure, maybe parking, maybe the parks, to make them happen now rather than waiting later. And so it doesn't cost anybody any more taxes. People are paying the same taxes they were paying, but you're capturing some of that value, deferring the city getting it for 10 or 20 years so that you can make the necessary investments to make this development happen. And let me just say that Raleigh is rightly proud of having a AAA bond rating. We're not suggesting that they jeopardize that. We're suggesting that they work with the developer to enhance the credit protection so that Raleigh's faith and credit are not at risk if this development does not happen. This is a suggested TIF district that we want a tax increment financing district. As you can see, it runs between, it's essentially a triangle between I-40, Hammond Road, and Lake Wheeler Road. So not only does it encompass this development, but it encompasses huge additional opportunities. As you think of Sanders Road and Wilmington, my colleagues have talked about the opportunity of that. So presently, in that entire TIF district, it generates the assessed value of that district as $150 million. When you think of Mr. Kane's development, it will be $2 billion itself. If you think of the other opportunities for development in that TIF district, the value that you're creating, your opportunity to monetize some of that value and to create and invest in this area strategically in a remarkable kind of way is a huge opportunity that I would take very, very seriously. So let me talk a little bit about imputation. You're going to have the weekend off, but Monday morning, if you're going to be serious about this, then you need to get up and do several things. The first is you need to decide who's in charge. Because there's lots of people in charge. And however you want to do this, this deserves somebody waking up, a team of people waking up every morning thinking just about this, not about 15 other projects. So it could be within your planning department, it could be a separate development authority you're going to create for South Raleigh, but this is an opportunity that deserves the complete attention of someone, not as part of a whole series of projects. We need to talk about articulating a clear vision. And my colleagues have really tried to pull that together, that this is not simply just a development, but it is the opportunity to transform a whole part of Raleigh into a different kind of place, creating great value for the citizens. Juanita articulated how important it is to have a really good communication strategy. You know, it is really hard to get everybody on the same place at the same time, and I don't know that it will ever happen, but you want to have a communication strategy that people understand what part and where they see themselves. They see a place for themselves in this opportunity. And then, look, we're talking about 20 or 25 different sources of financing, lots of moving parts. How that all comes together is really important, and who's in charge of that financing, and making sure it's working both for the self-interest of the public, the city, as well as the self-interest of the developers. How all that happens. You're talking about a public-private partnership culture that would be a remarkable opportunity. So let me just end with this. I came down here in the early 80s as then a young legislator for Pennsylvania to study how the Research Triangle happened, where that remarkable leadership and that boldness came from, to think about how you would keep your kids here who were being educated and then moving away because they could just be work in tobacco or furniture. Somebody had a remarkable vision. And you know, I know Raleigh is, for 50 years, you've been a leader in education. You know, you get national athletes. You have the second most educated place in the country. Your workforce is one of the most educated workforce. None of that happened by accident. It happened because people were bold and were very intentional about what they wanted to be. And you know, you're enjoying the benefits of those decisions from 50 or 60 years ago when there was vision. So it's your time now. You're at a crossroads. It's your choice, whether you want to be timid or bold, whether you want to think of this as another development and fight about a soccer field, or whether you want to talk about transforming this whole part of Raleigh. That's the decision you're facing. You can get lost in the weeds about this. But at the end of the day, this is the same kind of decision the people that made the choices about the research triangle or the people that made the choices about investing in your educational system. It's your choice. You know what? And it really isn't about a soccer field. It's not about money. It's not about the size of the buildings. It's about you. It's about whether you have the political and community will to reach for the future. That's your choice. Timid or bold. Kick that door down. Reach for the future. Good luck.
Well, I just threw my notes away because I can't follow that act very well. We're running a little bit longer than we had anticipated. I'm not going to apologize because what's happened here is these panelists have become so passionate that they broke some of the rules and they spoke longer and more passionately than we had agreed we were going to do. So I'm going to do the reverse. I'm not going to use my comments at all other than to say this truly is, as we started this conversation, this truly is a rare opportunity for you people here in Raleigh and in the region, and we think you ought to seize it. And interestingly about Triangle Park, Research Triangle Park, I'm one of those folks that's old enough. I was at Chapel Hill before the Research Triangle Park existed, okay? That goes back a ways, okay? So I'm incredibly impressed with the way this has all come together. We are going to take time for some questions and answers. We had originally said 10:45 stop. John, if you're okay with it, we might run a little longer, but we do have a couple of panelists that have to catch planes to go home, so we're not going to go much longer than that. But with that, questions? Yes, sir. We have a mic coming to you.
Oh, that's okay. I can speak without...
We're recording this.
Yeah,
You are? Okay. All right. I enjoyed all the very aspirational presentation we've seen here. What do you see as the obstacles to achieving this vision?
Frankly, as we went through it, Juanita, go ahead. Give her the mic.
Well, one of the reasons that we said, thank you for that question. Did everybody hear it? Okay. So one of the reasons that we decided to put the point about leading with community engagement and communications at the beginning is because it is a critical success factor. It's important to have everybody on the same page and have the same understanding about the project, right? That everybody sees and understands it, a shared understanding, number one. And number two, clear goals about what you're trying to achieve. And one of the messages, I hope that you heard it from all of the from many of us, is that this is more than a stadium. We've been talking about soccer, and yes, that's a dimension, that's a piece of it, but it's larger than that. It's about transforming a whole area, and it's about taking everyone along. So the obstacle would be not getting on the same page, not having a shared vision, not working together. We know that the city of Raleigh is much bigger than that because you've done big things. So that would be the important thing, is to get everybody on the same page.
I think that hits the nail on the head. Next. Yes, sir.
I'm Sig Hutchinson. I'm a Wake County Commissioner. And let me just say, as one commissioner, I see this as the greatest opportunity we've had in a generation for our county and our city. I would offer three things. Number one is the importance of a public-private partnership to ultimately make this happen. Number two is a shared vision throughout our community so there can be a collective understanding of what we want to do that will benefit everyone. And then the third thing I would say from the Wake County perspective is that we look forward to following the lead of the city of Raleigh, of which Mary Ann Baldwin and Nicole Stewart was here, and so it's great to see our political leaders. But as Mayor Murphy said, we are a great city, not by accident, and I look forward to doing all I can to provide intentionality to help allow this to come to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to doing that with you, Sig.
I think our job's done. Yes, ma'am.
I'm State Representative Yvonne Holly, and I'm a member of that community who I don't see many people in the room. I see Brad, okay? That's embarrassing. That's disheartening. That's your biggest obstacle to this event. And you really have to get a buy-in, and it has to be inclusive. No more coming and taking over people's property, but coming because you want to join something that's a good thing. You know, Southeast Raleigh and East Raleigh has been a wonderful place to live, and I've lived there all my life. And if you want to come over there, you're not coming to take it over, you're coming to be a part of it and the good things that it has to offer. And that must be foremost in the minds of the people who are trying to do this today. You know, if you come as a welcoming partner and if you're inclusive, the community will embrace you and it will support it. But if you come with, oh, we're going to just put up a few plaques in honor of a history, it's not going to work.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think that you will find that all of our panelists, this was an integral part of our conversation, and it is. And that's why we said this is really several projects. It's a soccer stadium, it's a real estate development project that's kind of defined, and then it's also a neighborhood in a region. I mean, you saw the map that we were talking about, because what we're saying is the folks that live there need to be a part of this opportunity. And also, when you look at the sources and uses of funds, and by the way, the Mayor Murphy has been a very strong force in this kind of movement all around the country. My background, you know, for most of my working career before I retired and my wife made me go back to work, I was a greedy, money-grubbing capitalist real estate developer, okay? So the mayor and I argued a good bit last night about the sources and uses, about what went where and who did what. But the fact of the matter is, when people like Tom and like myself get together and say, let's take care of everybody in this, when you look through that list, the numbers will change. The sources and uses, the specifics will change by reality when you folks get to working on it. But you'll notice, I think what you will notice there when you have an opportunity to look at the details of this, you'll see that there's money for housing for folks that will need to be considered as values go up. For example, you need to do something so that those folks that have lived there a long time who don't want to suffer from rising taxes because of rising values, somebody's got to address that issue, because that's a very real point. Not having gentrification will become one of the key factors in this, along with the opportunity for vacant lots to see new young families be able to move into your good neighborhood. All of this fits together. It's a long process. It isn't going to happen overnight. And I apologize for getting a little bit on my soapbox about that, but you hit the nail on the head. If we're not all going together, we're not going to get there. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sorry about that. My name is Tarika Mack, and I just had a question as far as the meetings that you guys are having. A lot of people are not aware of these meetings. What are you guys doing as far as putting the information out? We also have a lot of families in the community that don't have access to any type of technology, or either don't have the transportation to find out, to at least go to the library to find out about what's going on in their community. So it's really important. I'm part of the community and I try to spread the word, but it just needs to be more information put out, because there's a lot of people that would like to know what's going on. So do you guys have any options or anything that you guys can do about that?
I'd like to point out that the uses plan included $500,000. We're proposing $500,000 for the community and engagement plan. And so that $500,000, if that moves forward, part of that would have to be, where's the target community? Who are the leaders in that community? Who are the local nonprofit organizations that support and represent that community? And how do we mobilize those resources so that the communications gets there? It's important for everyone to understand what this is and have a shared understanding, shared vision, as was mentioned earlier. So there would be money, we're proposing money be allocated, focused on that. And that's the way we get at achieving that objective of not gentrification. It's not a bad thing in my view, it's the displacement piece. How do we make sure people stay in the community and they understand what is happening? And they play a role, they provide input into that process. Hope that answers you.
Anybody else? This is a quiet crowd. Thank you very much for letting us come to your community, and let me turn it over to our sponsor, John. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Leigh. I thought Steve and I were excited. Golly day, y'all's enthusiasm is contagious. I want to recognize a few people if I could. First, the YMCA here. This is the first time I've been here. Doug McMillan, I know, was here, but thank you to you and your team for allowing us to be here. This shows what this community is capable of doing. It's absolutely unbelievable. This was for how long was this Watson's Flea Market? 50 years or something? And look at what it is now. This is incredible. Elementary school, a high school, affordable housing coming, fields and places to play. This shows what we can do if we put our minds together. Thank you, Sig, for being here, County Commissioner, Mayor. I was about to say mayor-elect. I'm a mayoral candidate. I'm sorry, Freudian slip. I hope Charles and others aren't here. But Nicole Stewart, I know, was here, but I think she had to leave. And thank you to I see Smeeds here and Audie, who we all serve on the ULI Governance Committee, and thank you guys for your continued support. Also, I know David Ellis, County Commissioner, was here, as well as Chip. Thank you for being here. Jim Green was here, and Ruffin Hall was also here. Thank them for participating and being here. I really like to thank the ULI team, Tom Eitler, and everything that y'all have done. Really very much appreciate that. I want to recognize Alice Penny. Alice owns the land now. Thank you for having the confidence in us to be the ones that can deliver a vision for the city. So we appreciate that very much. Also like to thank the teams that have been working on this. Eklund Baum, they've done a lot of great work on this. Billy Redmond and Trademark Park Properties. Steve Malik and the NCFC team and the Kane Realty team, that we're really proud that everybody's done a great job pulling this together, and we're thankful for that. The 80 or so stakeholders, gosh, that just speaks volumes that our community will come out and spend an hour or more with these fine panelists to really see what we can do, and to have all that input is really invaluable, and we thank you for that. And last and foremost, Leigh and this panel, wow, y'all were just awesome. I mean, I know y'all have worked hard all week. We really appreciate that, Leigh. Appreciate your leadership and all that you've done there, and thank every one of you for what you've done. It's been a real pleasure and an honor, and I hope we can take your contagious enthusiasm and keep it alive. Thank you.